Hello and welcome. This is Level 1 Roundup, and I am your host, Level 1. This is my first episode of Roundup, and I thought, it'd be a great time to be able to talk about my thoughts on the new console that Microsoft unveiled called the Xbox One. Now, some time has gone by since the conference was unveiled, and, a lot of people are on the fence and not really sure what to be able to take from the actual presentation. So I thought it'd just be a cool time for me to be able to just talk about, my thoughts and what I thought, Microsoft did and kind of did wrong. So, for myself, I've been playing games since I was a little kid. I was born in 81. So if you do a little bit of math, you'll figure out how old I am. And since I've been playing games for that amount of time, I've kept up with the new consoles. I've played games, since the early Nintendo all the way till now. So, and be continuing just because it's my passion. It's something that I enjoy doing just because video games as a whole, they really do immerse you into something that you can't really replicate anywhere else, that I think. So I just thought it would be a great opportunity to be able to talk about this and give a little bit of insight on, what I think, Microsoft is doing and what they're doing right and wrong. So let's get started. My first impression of Microsoft's presentation was, where are the games? It seemed to really lack the main reason why a lot of people are paying attention to this presentation. Now, they had the world's attention for an hour, and they spent 45 minutes of that talking about the casual audience, and the last 15 minutes being, core driven. So I found myself, when I was watching the presentation, being unveiled, I just kept thinking, okay, well, they're going to be showing something exclusive, something exciting, because, Sony unveiled back in February the PS4. It's been a long time since people have been talking about it, and it's been building momentum. And for Microsoft to do this right so close to E3, it didn't seem to make sense to me on why unveil the new Xbox One to the audience right before E3. Now, I get that, they're creating buzz, it's going to be, all over the press, it's going to be all over the news, mainstream audience, so they can be excited for things that they're going to be doing with Microsoft, and that could potentially be a new customer. I get that. But the people that are paying attention to the presentation right when it was happening, I'd have to say that it's a huge amount of them are, really core gamers. And I just didn't find that to be, the reason why they wanted to be able to show that. They could have easily waited, it didn't seem to make sense to me. So looking at this new console cycle, it allows me to be able to look at my past and really appreciate how games have evolved so much. And in my early childhood, games were very casual, very easy to be able to play. And now it's not only just playing the game, you're experiencing something that may be different from other people. Your interaction with other characters may be different. And that's interesting because it allows you to be, have that one-to-one relationship with the actual game. And it's exciting to see stuff like that happen. And when a new console comes out, it's the promise of something new, something different, or maybe something expansive that you were never able to accomplish and be able to see, until now. So I like to look back at my past a lot with, the games, just because it gives you a reminder of the things that were important. And there are two games in particular that I remember playing that did just that. The two games that I'm referring to came out during the PlayStation 2 era and were exclusive. And the first game that I played that changed everything was Ico, and the other was Shadow of the Colossus. Ico was one of those games that came out in 2001 that completely surprised me. I remember picking up that game, and knowing nothing about it. I picked it up and looked at the back, and I was like, yeah, that looks interesting. Little did I know that the developers, Team Ico, created something that I will remember for the rest of my days, in gaming, because the way that story was developed was it's so innocent in its own way. You're this child that just, that's banished into this other world, and you're basically alone and isolated until you meet this other person that's kind of in the same way isolated as well. And it's you just creating that bond between, you saving the other person. And the mechanics are just, they're simple, but they're elegant in the way you have to rescue the princess by these kind of like these, I don't know, like shadow kind of things, like these images that of like the silhouettes of people or monsters, and they're constantly after this person, and you have to be able to save her. Now, the only thing you have to protect her with is the stick. And the way that you use that stick is just, you just have to swing and defeat these things. But it gets harder because you constantly have to figure out a way to be able to keep the person safe and keep you safe. And it's such a great game. And the other one that came out in 2005 was Shadow of the Colossus. Now, that game by far, that was another game that I saw the actual cover of it, and that was it. That's all I needed. That game, my God, it is a living piece of art. That the game is basically revolved around these 16 colossi that you have to defeat. And the way that you have to defeat them is by actually climbing onto these things. These things are huge, living, beasts, monsters. And you have to figure out a way to climb on top of them when they're fully aware that you're doing that, and they try to shake you off. And it's such an incredible game. And they released it on the PS3 in HD, and it's incredible. Now it's at 60 frames per second, and it's smoother. It's just, you see things that you didn't see in the PS2 game, just because the quality wasn't as high as it is now. And man, I mean, I remember playing this game over again, and it's like you playing it for the first time. I forgot things that were in there that were just incredible. And those two games, it's just so emotionally driven, and the story is so, it's simple in its own way, but it's just, there's something to it that it's just like this just magic of you being completely immersed in this world of these giants, and also these shadow kind of figurine kind of silhouette images, monsters, I guess. And up until like towards like the very end of the stories of both of them, it made you realize that what you were playing was just simply a game. And if you haven't picked that up, I'd highly recommend it. It's one of my two favorite games that I love playing. And if you have the time, please pick those games up if you have a PlayStation 3 or even a PS2. So Xbox as a whole, Xbox One as a whole, had this time to be able to show people where Xbox and Microsoft is moving towards, and what they want to show their audience to be. And to me, it showed that the audience that they're more interested in is the casual audience. Now, in it being the casual audience, that's great. Everybody starts off at some console, cycle. Everybody starts at a different generation. I understand that. However, Xbox has really kind of always showed itself to be a core gaming experience. And you can argue in the past several years with the Xbox 360, they've moved towards a more casual audience, considering that they moved with that Kinect. And you can also say that the reason why they made that drastic move is because the Nintendo Wii was unveiled, and at first people were just like, this doesn't make sense. But once people started playing it, they got it instantly. So that whole motion gaming changed everything. So since Xbox has kind of changed their vision and where they want to move their actual console to, this presentation was the primary reason on why people wanted to be able to watch this console and see what it's going to do. So them unveiling that it's just, a whole hour segment dedicated to them. About the last, say, 15 to maybe 20 minutes of that was actually talking about the games, and it's an hour-long segment. So what they talked about was, showing exactly what the Xbox is going to be able to do, the power of what the capabilities are. And now that it's running at an 8-core processor, it's a x86, and it's got 8 gigs of RAM. So the memory on that is going to give, more of these developers more time to be able to create bigger games, bigger worlds, things like that. However, that's going to translate into the actual console itself, in the system itself, because it can be able to do multiple things at once, and it won't have to stutter. It can be able to download something while you're actually watching something, being able to play something while you're downloading it. So it's going to be able to multitask even further. 500 gigs of hard drive space that's built into it. They didn't talk about specifically expanding that. They just said 500 gigs. It does have a Blu-ray player built into it, which is great, because now you won't have to have multiple discs for these big games that have come out, like The Witcher 2, LA Noire, Mass Effect 3, games like that are big games that you won't have to have a huge amount of actual discs for. So it's going to be a great thing for that, to compress all those discs and maybe only have one, possibly maybe even two. One of the new things with the Xbox One is it has a DVR function built into it. So a DVR allows you to be able to record something, just like if you have a cable provider and you have a DVR HD, it allows you to be able to record anything you want, TV shows, so you don't have to actually be there watching it. You can just set record, walk away, and it records. You can schedule times, things like that. So they're kind of moving that into this console, so you can be able to possibly be able to record your gameplay. Whether how much you can be able to record at once is kind of arguable. They didn't really talk about it, but you can say that you can be able to record for 500 gig worth. You can possibly say that, but they weren't specific. It does have an HDMI in and out port, runs the 3.0 USB. However, looking at the actual system as itself, showing that the Kinect has to be, the Kinect is bundled with it. It's no longer being separated away from the actual console. They showed the all-in-one system, showing the actual console, which looks really big. And the way that it looks to me is I have a DVD home theater system that's my receiver that also has a 5-disc changer built into it, and that thing is pretty big. It's pretty hefty. It's not heavy, but it's wide, and the Xbox looks pretty wide. It looks like it's going to be a really big box, and for you to really kind of show that you want to dominate the living room, it does just that. So with this all-in-one system, the new console, the new controller, and also the new Kinect 2.0. So with that Kinect, they're really positioning their next console to have that support built into it. So you have to have that actually connected into the console itself. Whether it has to be turned on and continuously has to stay on, they haven't specifically said what it's going to do. We'll get more information when E3 comes out. But for right now, everyone's kind of speculating, and everyone's kind of, this whole thing about being always connected. That was a big thing that started happening around 2 months ago, that these rumors started to float around before this event even happened, that Xbox is going to have to be constantly connected all the time to your internet. So it does ruffle a lot of people's feathers, just because sometimes you don't have to play games online all the time. There's games that are single player driven only and don't have a multiplayer co-op, expansion on top of that. So this idea that the console always has to be connected is something that doesn't give the actual the customer the ability to be able to say, you know what, I don't want to play it online. Or what happens if you buy a game? Just a prime example, something just happened recently with EA and SimCity. That game came out, and it came out for PC and Apple, I believe sometime in June. But for right now, it's on PC only. And that game directly said that they wanted to move it it only being an online only game. So you had to be connected to the internet in order to play it. Now, there are some good things with that, where you can be able to update your game, instantly right when you get it. Day one patches, fix problems, bugs, things like that. But you also have a different problem too, is that what if the servers go down on their end and you have a solid internet connection and their servers go down, just like what it did for like 2.5 weeks after the game was launched. It had problems. You couldn't be able to play the game just because the servers were too busy, or they were temporarily down because of maintenance, or just because of the amount of people that wanted to play it all at once. The servers couldn't handle it. So those kind of questions started to come about after these rumors started coming afloat before this actual event. So seeing that the Kinect has to be, connected into your device, it kind of gives another thing of like, well, does it always have to be connected? Can you turn it off? And do you have the power to be able to do that? Can you say that you don't want it? Because you're having a camera that can be able to, what they showed is that it has the ability to be able to read your heartbeat. Now, I don't know if you can do that for everything, but they said that it's that precise that it can be able to do that. So it can be able to register face recognition people in there. So you can see how some people will be like a little hesitant on that. I, for one, am one of those people. I'm not a big supporter of the Kinect. I never have been, just because I like that tactile feeling of a controller. And when you have a controller that does it right and, has that feeling of, being able to move around, moving your character around, you making those judgments because you're making that whatever you're doing, I find those are the core things of like why I love playing games, because you feel like you're actually doing something. And with the Kinect, it just seemed like an additional peripheral that I don't need. I'm not gonna need something like that. I don't need the voice command. That doesn't do anything for me. So with that, the actual controller itself, it showed some pretty interesting things. That they have that impulse triggers that they talked about, that it actually allows developers to go inside the controller and create their own customized feedback with the triggers. So you can have different sound, I guess maybe different feel, like maybe like the way that you'll hear sound. You'll be able to hear like a rumble on one side of the controller, so if there's an enemy around, things like that. So it's interesting that they did that. The precision D-pad that they improved, it's a plus. It's good. It's not anything they shouldn't have done already. The actual controller itself, instead of the things that it's going to do, there are some buttons that are on there that they didn't talk about, where the select and start button are. Those are no longer there. The select and start button are gone, and the select look like your picture in picture, where you could be able to maybe customize that, where you can be able to go instantly to Netflix, ESPN, NFL, or go back to your game, things like that. With that, also the start button being replaced with looks like a main menu kind of little option. Maybe you can be able to have your favorites, your most recent activity right then and there. So it's a quick little interface that you can be able to utilize. So they didn't say specifically, although it looks like that may be it. And also the very top Xbox logo button that's on the Xbox 360, which is basically your main menu hub. And it looks like, I don't know if that's an actual physical button to be able to press, but more than likely it probably still is, so that may be able to get you into something. But once again, they didn't release any specific information about it. They just kind of showed an overlay of what the controller is capable of doing. They unveiled a lot of things with their dashboard. Probably the biggest thing that they talked about was their partnership with the NFL. So with that, it allows people that are sports gurus, that follow sports religiously, and that also are involved in fantasy football. So if you're interested in fantasy football and you have an Xbox, it's gonna be great, because you'll see live feedback right when it happens when you're playing a game. And they did a demo of that showing NBA, and then they also showed that with I think it was just the NBA. And the NFL is more likely going to do exactly the same thing. So it's going to have that live ticker that's going to show like updates on your player and seeing if your fantasy points are going up or down. So the apps, probably the big one was Skype, capabilities of that, having your video conferencing. But that video conferencing for me, that doesn't do anything. Although it would be interesting if you can be able to, I think it would be cool, is what if you bought the game and maybe the developers had like, they had maybe a live segment where they would have their Skype account on, and you can be able to actually, talk to them while you're playing the game, or they can give you hints on like playing the game. The interaction that video conferencing that seems really interesting to me, that you can interact with the people that created the game and give them feedback right when it's happening, that real-time interaction that you wouldn't be able to do before, now you can. So that was one of the things that I took away from that, just the dashboard, just being the updating, the multitasking. You can be able to do that snap mode you can gesture with your hands, the voice commands. So those additions onto that, they're nice, but that's not going to drive me on the reason why me as a consumer, why I'm going to want the Xbox One day one. And the way that it's looking, I have to see more information about it when E3 comes out, but for right now, I'm not leaning towards Xbox at all. I don't like the limitations that I'm hearing after the presentation, and things that I'm hearing from the grapevine, from them being stated that the Xbox doesn't have to be connected online all the time. It has to maybe check in once a day. And these restrictions of maybe even used games, those are big things. And used games, backwards compatibility is important to some, for a duration when a new console comes out, but it doesn't look like they're combating the used games correctly. It looks like they're just alienating people that want to, buy games, and then not, if they don't play them anymore, why can't they be able to sell them and be able to, buy another game? It's their right. They bought the game, and they can do what they want with it. So it's like this used game market doesn't seem to be moving in a direction that's going to be, friendly. When it comes down to purchasing a game myself, I always do the research. I always look at the developers, their interviews, the publishers, what they've done in the past, and just looking at their history as a whole. The reason why I do that is because I'm a consumer. I can't purchase every single game that comes out. I have to, do a little bit more research and a little bit more legwork to see what I'm gonna take a chance on, or something that I know that's gonna be good just because of the things that they've been saying. Some of the developers, the interviews, the type of questions, things like that. One of the games in particular that I am following that's going to be coming out soon is The Last of Us. And the reason why, I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, and I've read the comic books, I continue to read those, and also the TV show. So I love that immersiveness of the story-driven apocalypse, scenario. I love that. And hearing the things that Naughty Dog has done with that, they're not necessarily zombies, but they're like infected, and it's such a cool take on what they're doing, and I love that they're doing that. They're changing, the template of what zombies are and making it their own, and those are the type of things that I look at and I do my research on. That was one of the things that I didn't see Microsoft moving towards. It didn't seem like they were talking about games. It was an hour segment, and 45 minutes into it, they finally show you something resembling gameplay. Now, they did talk about, now I don't want to brush this off, but they did talk about the TV aspect to what Microsoft is doing. The Xbox Entertainment Studios, they presented the Halo live action TV show that's going to be directed by Steven Spielberg. That's going to be interesting. That looks cool. I'm all support for games that have continuations in the games, from the games to the actual TV show. That's great. I support that 100%. My only problem is that how many games are going to be actually doing something like that, because that seems like that's going to be extremely hard for Xbox to handle, that as well as their dashboard, as well as their games, their third-party support, their first-party support, if there's any, and getting all their hands mixed into other things, and also keeping with the casual audience now. I don't know. It's just a lot of interest, and it's a lot of focus on other things rather than what's important. The people that support your games and the reason why they get it. These additional things are nice, but going back to what I was saying earlier, these games have to show you something on why you want to buy them. There's something there. So giving that TV show, I think it's a great idea. The other one that looked like it was a TV show, but they kind of showed it as an actual game, is that the one that's being worked on by Remedy. They worked on the Max Payne franchise, and they unveiled a live action trailer that was called Quantum Break, and it looked like a mixture between a TV show and also the game. So similar towards what Defiance is doing right now with the Sci-Fi Network. They're having a TV show, but then they're also having a game that's also changing weekly. So it's a cool thing that they're doing. It's just not a lot of games that are actually doing that, because it's a hard thing to be able to do. You're doing multiple things rather than just the actual the single player aspect to it. So in that, I couldn't after I was watching it, I was just like, where are the games? What are they showing? And to talk about this more is that casual audience. The EA Sports came on, also Force of 5 came out, and they showed their trailer for that being developed by Turn 10. And I just looked at it, I was like, okay, these are, Force of 5 is not a annual game at all. I'm just saying that it's a casual game, because it's a racing game. And well, I guess I shouldn't say that. It's Force of 5 is a racing game that a lot of people really care for and they really like. I personally am not a big racing fan. I like the Need for Speed franchise a little. I like the Need for Speed Shift, the original Need for Speed that was on the PC. That I loved. All the High Pursuit. Those are huge games that I really liked. But Force of 5, I never really got into. Racing games are not really my. NBA Live was announced, and which is cool. They haven't had a release game since 2009, which is the NBA Live 10, and that's cool. I didn't really follow NBA Live too much, just because I liked 2K better. I found that their game physics, the way that the balls would move, the way that the players would interact with it, them creating that dynamic, actual physics to it. There's a lot of cool things that they've implemented in the game, especially the latest one, 2K13. That's one of my favorite basketball games, just because it's so cool. You can be able to drive to the basket. The defense can close in on you, and you can be able to create pass and seams and things like that. It's a really, really cool game, and I've been a big fan of that so far. So we'll see what NBA Live can do. The NFL, not so much. The FIFA also was announced. That's FIFA 4 Ultimate Team is going to be exclusive with the Xbox One, and also UFC, which UFC, no, not once again. I'm not a fan of. The closest I got to a fighting game was Fight Night Round 3. That game in particular, I played with a buddy of mine, and we would get so heated playing each other. There'd be times that I would lose, and I would get so upset. I'd throw the controller down and get so pissed off, and just have to take a moment and just kind of walk away and come back. And other times, when I would win, I would throw it in my friend's face and just, tell him that he can't play, he sucks, all those cool things that you do when you're especially playing like a boxing game. It's so incredible to play, especially the slow-mo replays. And especially when you get that one haymaker in and just knocks a dude, like his knees buckle and you can see him falling to the ground. And that was the worst, especially when you lose and you see that over and over and the other person keeps replaying it. So those are the things that I remember playing. And lastly, Activision talked about Call of Duty Ghost, still being developed by Infinity Ward, and it looked pretty interesting. They did talk about some new things that they can do with the new generation console, allowing them to be able to do, dynamic maps. They created a new engine, especially for this, which is good because they've been using the same engine for like 5 years, so it's good that they're at least doing that. So, and that's kind of the reason why I'm not really excited when I saw the Call of Duty. I was just like, okay, it's gonna be another shooter that's gonna dominate, every year. So I like Call of Duty. That's not going to be a reason why I'm going to purchase, Xbox One, possibly even day one. So, that was lacking, just seeing stuff like that. And it's, again, that's kind of like casual as well as, a little bit of hardcore, gamers, but more casual just because it's an annual game. And that about does it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and bearing with me on my first episode of Level One Roundup. And it is still a learning experience. It took me a while for me to be able to finish this as a whole, just because I didn't realize even if when you make mistakes you have to edit yourself and you have to be able to do your voiceover again, and it takes a little bit of time. But considering that this is still June 10th and E3 is mere hours away, this didn't stop me from still talking about Xbox's conference, because to me this is still something that's important to me. And I'm excited to see what E3 is going to be doing. I would love to be able to be there, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But this is my outlet. This is a way for me to be able to talk about the things that happen, and it's going to be really exciting to see where the consoles are going to be moving towards, the things that they're going to be talking about, new developers, new IPs. It's going to be exciting. So I can't wait to see what Sony's going to do, and also what Nintendo's going to do. I haven't seen them too much. It seems like they're kind of in the shadows of Sony and Microsoft right now, but I'm sure Nintendo will have something, they'll have something that will excite fans. And I've been out of Nintendo for quite some time, and hey, any new game can be able to bring me back in, so that's the thing that I always love. You never really know. There's always going to be something that can pull you in and get you to want to actually, get into their system. So, we'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for listening, and I'll have once E3 is over, I'm going to try to see if I can be able to have day-to-day segments on the days after the end, and to be able to just talk about the things that were announced, things that they, that the publishers talked about, and things like that. So I'll kind of spitballing right now just to try to get an idea of what I'll do. But if you do have any comments or if you have any feedback, please let me know. You can feel free to just let me know if I did something bad, if I said something wrong, just call me out on it. It's a learning experience, and I'm not afraid to be able to hear what other people think, just because I'm the one saying it. So let me know, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks a lot.